Hello and welcome to today's episode of Fly to Freedom. I have actually somebody that used to coach me as a guest today, and no, it's not Victoria. It is the incredible Michelle Zelli. Michelle turned her breakdown into her breakthrough, and she has never looked back. She's passionate about using the vast and diverse knowledge she has, that she's gained over 2 incredible decades of transformation to support and guide clients through their challenges to achieve self-actualization, illuminating challenging and unhelpful beliefs, patterns of behaviors, and healing childhood wounds. Michelle blends cutting-edge science with practical psychology to ensure fast, lasting change. Michelle, welcome.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you very much indeed. It's nice to be here.
Okay, so as I mentioned briefly before I hit record, I do have a few icebreaker questions. The first one is, what is the kindest thing you've done for yourself today?
Oh, today, the kindest thing. I cancelled something because I was running around like a lunatic to get here. And I, as a lot of people with trauma, I don't respond well to rushing. So rather than frazzle myself, I cancelled something, which meant I still had to pay, but hey ho, it was worth it and it was kind.
Amazing. And actually, we will revisit that trauma and rushing thing in our discussion in a little while. Very interesting. Has a book ever changed or really impacted your life?
Yes, it has. It was Conversations with God.
Amazing book.
A girlfriend of mine bought it for me, and I saw the title and I thought, I have no idea why she's given this to me. This is before I came on the path, so to speak, of healing. And I put it up on my bookshelf when I lived in Richmond, so it was really high up. And 2 years or so later, I walked past and that book fell on me.
That must have hurt. It's a big book.
No, it was the paperback version. But yeah, but it was okay. So I'm hearing. I've got to pay attention. I opened it, started reading it, and Neil Donald Walsh talks about when he had his darkest moment and how God, or the universe actually, just spoke through him, and he wrote and he wrote and he wrote, and it's all answers. Mm-hmm. And those answers resonate with my beliefs, and I've been evidencing them for 25 years of coaching. So absolutely, that book did change my life.
It is an incredible book. It's a very detailed and very long book, but it's an incredible book. What qualities do you most admire in others?
Authenticity. Courage to be in one's own lane and not compare ourselves, not look over the shoulder, to do it our way, be individual and make a difference, and being kind to animals.
I love that. Love that extra bit at the end.
Oh, I mean, you and me and dogs, right?
Absolutely. Totally. Okay, completely random fun one. Do you have a party trick?
Oh, God. Do I have I can play the spoons.
Oh, epic.
I had to think for one that I yeah, I can play the spoons.
Excellent. And last question. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to put another one in. Oh. What breed of dog would you be?
Oh, what a good question. I'd probably be a Romanian mountain dog.
Why?
Because they're quite sloth-like. They like to just sit and observe, but they're very curious. They pay super close attention. And if they need to react, they react very quickly, but in short spurts. They're also incredibly smart and ditzy in equal measure.
Sounds epic. And last question, if you had a magic wand and you could do anything to anyone, anything, the world, you got to use it once, what would you use it for?
Save all the dogs.
Amazing.
I would ban all cruelty, not just dogs, all cruelty. To humans, cruelty is just, I cannot get my head around it. It's devastating.
Yeah, it is. It's devastating to so many. So beautiful use of your magic wand. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I wanted to get into on this podcast that you helped me with hugely is the inner child and inner child healing. So when I first heard this, I just thought it was some kind of trendy excuse to behave badly, actually, when I very first heard about it. Yeah, because I had no idea about healing. I was in total denial that I needed to do any. I had this front of being all put together and was convincing myself very, very effectively that everything was absolutely fine, and was very much in a circle of keep calm and carry on type people, and that you just needed to basically do that and pull yourself together.
Absolutely.
And actually, some of that comes from my childhood conditioning. A lot of it comes from my childhood conditioning. So for anybody else that has the misconceptions that I used to have, and I definitely do say used to, can you explain what the concept of the inner child is and why it is so important to our personal growth and healing?
Can. I'm delighted you're a convert. So, inner child. First of all, can I just explain? Inner child isn't always when we've got trauma or sadness or something is out of whack. Inner child is also playfulness, joy, liberation, creativity. So I think what we're in danger of is as a culture now is shoehorning it all into trauma. It's a wide use. There's also inner teenager. There's inner younger versions of ourselves. But the inner child basically is the younger part of us that needed protection, nurturing, and guidance. Three things that a mother, and it is the mother, is responsible for. And if we didn't get 100% of any of those, there will be some adult implication. Now, that's not to say that it's going to be huge. It depends how much was lacking. So if you take each pot, the nurturance, the protection, and the guidance, and you think to yourself, well, how much of each of those did I have versus what I needed? That will give you a rough idea of the trauma or the wound that one is dealing with. So what would happen if we had an inner child wound? We'd have low self-esteem. We could have perfectionism, which often leads to procrastination, hypervigilance, anxiety, an inability to speak up or be heard, an allergy to injustice, feeling like we're not deserving, those kind of things.
Okay, yeah, I think I ticked every one.
You and me both. You and me both.
So a lot of people, and certainly from my own experience, I would have said that my relationship with my mum was fantastic, and she was my best friend, and that there was no issues. So how do we know when we don't know?
You get a really good coach, because a coach is light on your blind spots. That's why people like you and me exist. Nobody. And, I have coaches. Even though I'm 25 years in the game. It's impossible to see your own blind spots. But the reality is that there's a few things that happen. Number one is normalization. We normalize the untenable, the uncomfortable, the abuse, because we're used to it.
I suppose to a child, that's all they've ever known. So it is their normal.
It is, but even as an adult, we still often, I'll see people and they normalize certain behaviors, let's just say mother and daughter behaviors, and they are abusive or they are highly codependent, they're highly enmeshed, and they've got a lot of negative consequences. But because it's as it's always been and they don't know any different, they assume that that is normal.
Can you clarify, because I didn't know, so maybe other people don't know. I don't know what enmeshment actually means.
So enmeshment is when the child is caretaking the parent. That's basically, and it happens a lot. So if mum has, let's just say mum's got chronic depression, and you learn as a child, shh, mum's got a headache. Shh, we don't want to make mum angry. So what you're doing is you are betraying yourself for all the right reasons, as far as you're concerned. You want to be a good little girl. But actually, you're subduing yourself for the parent's need. And actually, what should be happening is the parent is taking care of themselves so that they can look after the child's need. And so the individuality of that child can blossom, not be slowly shut down or, God damn it, clamped down.
So if this is happening in someone's childhood, say that there is enmeshment, it's not necessarily the parent's fault particularly either, because a lot of the time they're unaware of what they're doing.
I never work with fault. I find our culture's need to put blame and shame on a behavior, it drives it underground. 95% of parents come from a good place.
Yes.
They're doing the best they can with what they know and what they have available to them. But that doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge that we didn't get enough of something without shaming them. And you and I have done some significant work. You know where I'm coming from.
Yes.
But in our culture, we like to right or wrong, good or bad. But all that does is shut down curiosity. You can't be judgmental and curious.
This is
I had a very abusive childhood. And there's no point me saying, well, is it right or wrong? Or shall I blame them and shame them? Where's that going to get me? I look at what happened to me, and then we start to heal that. And that then there are implications in the adult relationship with the parent.
Okay. So what are some common signs or symptoms that indicate a wounded or neglected inner child?
So as I mentioned earlier, it will be perfectionism, fear of getting it wrong, procrastination, denial, fantasy. Often a wounded inner child had to go and create an alternative reality. I went into books. Now there's a whole load of other options for kids. So we grow up being fantasists, being in denial, hypervigilance, fear. So super fear. We're always scanning for something that isn't quite right, or danger. And of course, that can be extremely restricting in adult life. It can be an inability to regulate our body, our eating, our drinking, our gambling, our TV time. Low self-esteem. And how do we know somebody's self-esteem really easily? Look at who they date. Look at their partner. We date at the level of our self-esteem.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. If you actually, Julia, if you actually put your boyfriends in a little row, you'll see how your esteem has changed. Self-esteem.
Well, I've been with my husband since I was 18.
Okay.
And our relationship has very definitely changed and developed significantly since I started my healing journey. So although I can't say that it's obviously different people, but he is a different person now, and I'm a very, very different person. So,
Humans are designed to evolve. When we stop evolving, we start dying.
Yeah.
So even in a marriage that stretches eons, decades and decades, how old do I make you sound? Of course, there's evolution. And one of the reasons that more than 50% of marriages don't work, one of the significant reasons, is that the evolution isn't in the same direction.
Yes.
It's not mindful evolution.
And communication.
Yes, it's communicating about who I am, who I want to be, where are we growing into, how do we go about this? It's endless, but yeah.
Another podcast again.
We'll just do a series, shall we?
So how would somebody, once they've recognized that they are struggling with perfectionism, people pleasing, anxiety, fear, and all the things, how would they start to go about healing? What would you advise?
I think it's very, very difficult to do it alone, because you're trying to heal with the same knowledge from the same place as you got hurt or sick or wounded. And Einstein said that you can't do that. And who am I to question Einstein? So, I genuinely do think it's very, very hard to do that. But I think there are steps that you can take to start. So inner child meditations, there's loads of them out there. YouTube, and start to connect with one's inner child and sit with him or her and listen to what they have to say. Often people struggle with that because it's very, very painful. We often disconnect from our inner children because...
I was going to say that because I felt like I was playing make-believe when I tried to connect with my inner child. I felt like there was nothing there. I felt like, I might just say yes to just try and keep this coach happy because I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, we also have to remember that we have probably scared our inner children. So remember that every cell eavesdrops on every thought. So when one, not you personally, but when one is critical, self-judgmental, self-attacking, that little person in there takes it all very personally. So when you criticize yourself, you're criticizing that little person. And you're reinforcing the very damage, the wounding from childhood.
So bring in self-compassion to start then.
Radical self-compassion, which leads me to Tara Brach, Brach, great audio. She's got some lovely meditation. She's very soft, very slow. And if you're very fast-paced, that's going to drive you crazy. But it's also really good discipline to stay slower because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the signs of trauma is not being able to slow down.
Yeah, let's touch on that now. So my own personal experience my whole life, actually, if I'm being completely honest, but then most of my life was in an eating disorder anyway. But I was busy. I was doing from like 4 o'clock in the morning until midnight every day. And I didn't not do. And I got really validated for it as well. Like people were constantly saying, oh, it's amazing how much you can do. Don't know where you get all the energy. Since I've recovered from the anorexia and turn that recovery journey into a discovery journey, and that continues and likely always will, because there's always more to learn, to discover. I don't like being busy. And if I look at a day that I've planned in my diary and it's got too much in, I just feel like total overwhelm, like I can't do any of it. Like I actually just want to go back in bed and not even start that day.
Yep.
So how have I gone from being so constantly busy all the fucking time to not even able to do half of what I wanted to do because it overwhelms me?
You're in touch with yourself. Yes. So, Eckhart Tolle says we are human beings. We are not human doings. And that really resonated with me. And my old role before I was a coach, I was managing director of a large TV company, and I started work at 6 a.m. and I finished work at 11 o'clock at night regularly. And I was literally running away from myself, running away from connection. So when we are running like a busy fool, we're actually not connecting with ourselves. So if we're not connecting with ourselves, there's usually a reason. And the reason is usually that when we do connect with ourselves, it feels shit. It feels awful. There is an empty void which we will fill with food or booze or sex or drugs or screen time or whatever it's shopping, whatever it is. And we call that the void a void. Remember? Avoid dance, avoidance. We're dancing around the void. So when you're talking about running around versus overwhelm, what it means is that your nervous system, which has been stretched to the max by go, 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 which you got validation from. So, of course, getting the validation makes it look and sound sexy.
Yes.
What we're not aware of is that we're running away from ourselves and we're running into a brick wall. There's, as we get older, and I know you're nowhere near as old as I am, but as we get older, the nervous system it takes its toll on the nervous system. It can't tolerate what it used to tolerate. So a lot of people that don't do the work end up drinking way too much or medicating in one way or another to numb that out.
Okay.
Actually, what we want to do is we want to slow down, use our breath to connect with our body. Our body's where our feelings are kept, not our head, which is why so many people are disconnected from the body. So many people are overeating, overdrinking, whatever, to push the feelings down.
Or under eating, because restricting stops the feelings as well.
Absolutely. And so what happens is that we've disconnected ourselves. We're numb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the overwhelm is our nervous system frazzled. My favorite F word of the day.
So is that always going to be the case?
Well, I think there's things we can do. Our vitamins, our supplements, the amount of hydration we have. And the science is strong that the mental health is also impacted heavily by the gut health. So
yes.
Probiotics, stuff like that. Anything you can do to promote a healthy gut to help healthy mental health.
Yeah, I totally agree. Probiotics are really, really helpful. But the stress and pressure that some people can put themselves under, certainly I used to try and achieve this idealistic diet.
We're back to perfectionism.
Yeah, that the the stress from the hormones, or the stress hormones, probably affected me far worse than anything I could have eaten.
Yeah, but that, for me, that's about perfectionism. And we've got to look at why I need to be perfect. What is going on there with my self-esteem?
Absolutely.
So I'm certainly agreeing with you in many ways. And I think that there is a crossover. I think there's a natural crossover here.
Yes. Yeah. Also, all depending on where you are in your relationship with food and your body.
Where you are down the road.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, initially I did allow all foods, and as I have become totally fearless, is that the right word? I have no fear of what I eat anymore or its effect on me. I have naturally progressed to wanting to look after myself and ensuring that what I eat makes me feel good.
Yeah. I mean, self-care is
Yes.
the first level of self-respect.
Absolutely.
So if the platform of self-care is not strong and we start to layer things on top of it, it's going to crumble. So that self-care, whatever that is, your sleep hygiene, hydration, movement of some description every day, whatever your nutrients and nourishment. So when I use the word diet, I'm not talking about restrictive eating. I'm talking about what we put into our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a fine line between trying to do the stuff the science tells us to do and becoming obsessive about it. And I think if you haven't got a healthy relationship with self, you can almost try too hard, and that can become detrimental.
I think that's where I would look. If somebody's obsessive about anything, what I do is I channel that. I'm an obsessive. I'm an obsessive compulsive. I didn't come into this for any other reason than I had a massive breakdown and I was diagnosed with all these symptoms of, bipolar and eating disorder and love addiction. And I mean, it went on and on and on. And so that's what brought me to this. And as an obsessive compulsive, and I had bulimia for 6-7 years from the age of 13. What I actually had was I needed to work with the obsessiveness as well. What is driving that?
Mm-hmm.
So if we heal one behavior, it pops up somewhere else.
Yes, yeah, we do normally have to start looking at the roots.
We do.
And so, what would working with your inner child, what would that start to look like when you take the steps into, okay, I accept that I need to do some inner child healing? What's that going to start to look like?
Well, I think the first thing is connecting with that inner child, and you either hire somebody to help you with it, which if you can afford it, do it, get the best coach you can, or you go into some meditations where you start to connect. Now, often the inner child has trauma, and trauma is basically anything that's happened that was overwhelming for us emotionally. Emotions bigger than we could handle. That's what trauma is. It's not always, God forbid, watching somebody be blown up or being in a car accident, although those count too.
So it's not the actual event, it's how we feel about what the things that are happening in our world.
It's the impact that event has internally. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So when we start to do inner child, we take it very slowly and very gently, and we come at it from absolute compassion. We are the advocator, the protector, the nurturer that little girl or boy never had. So we can get art, you use paints and drawings and journaling and really give yourself permission to express yourself as that child.
So you're being both the parent and the child at the same time.
Yes, but just like you can observe your thoughts, you're not your thoughts, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So you can observe your thoughts. So you, as the adult, the functional adult, can observe the inner child. Did that make sense?
It did make sense, yes. So you mentioned earlier that it's not all about the upset and the difficult things. We can allow our inner child to come out and play.
Very much so. And it's a big part of it. A big part of it. But often the inner child is too scared. They've been judged. They've been restricted. They've been pushed down. They've had to be perfect. So they don't know how to play even. So that's, start with crayons, start with going and paddling in a pond. Do little things that bring that little part of us joy. Feeding the ducks is one of my favorite. Walking jumping in puddles in your Wellingtons. I mean, it just brings out that childlike self. And the more you can connect with that part and sit with it, the more you learn to understand it. Here, what does that part need? And then you start to give it what it needs.
Mm. I used to love catching autumn leaves that were falling from trees. And I did actually spend quite a lot of last summer making daisy chains.
I remember that, and it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. It's just innocent joy. And that's something that, many of us lost.
There's something about being an adult. I know for myself, I felt that I wasn't allowed to play. It's only actually since I worked with you that I've allowed myself to watch Disney films, which I love, by the way, absolutely love them. But I never thought as an adult I was allowed to do things like that. And I don't know why I'd given myself those rules, but they were quite strict.
So did you feel that you could only do something if it was productive? You mentioned earlier that you worked from 6 to 11, you would go. And I'm guessing from that you felt that you had to be productive. You always had to be
productive or doing things for others. So people pleasing, really.
And people pleasing, as we know, is a form of trauma. It's betraying ourselves in order to get an accolade, to get a validation externally.
Yes, to feel valued.
Yeah, rather than valuing ourselves. So, we've got internal and external referencing. And so if we need a lot of external referencing, a lot of external validation, it can often lead to people pleasing. And what we want to do is we want to validate ourselves so that it becomes less pressure to please others to get that back. Because we can get quite grumpy if we give, and we don't get that validation back. Not you, though.
No, I didn't actually. I just used to try hard. I just used to think I was doing something wrong, that I was not good enough even more. So no, I didn't get grumpy. I didn't know how to get grumpy, actually. Again, that's suppressing feelings, isn't it? Not feeling.
Well, it would suggest that in your childhood that there was no room there was no room for your anger. That would say that there were other things going on, but your anger wasn't welcomed. So you learnt to suppress it to be a good girl.
Yes, and I think a lot of people do, don't they? They learn,
particularly women.
Yes, hugely. We suppress parts of ourselves to be acceptable.
Yeah, and you think about it, an angry woman is a bitch, and an angry man is assertive. Now,
yes,
generalization, but it's not far off. So we learned as little girls, and I think it's different now with the generations coming through, but certainly my generation and your generation, ladylike was important, much more important than expressing yourself and being authentic.
don't think there was ever any invitation to express myself or be authentic. It was all about having good manners, showing that I was a good girl from a good family. It was all about what people would think, really.
Outside. So again, that's, you
Yes.
see, that's where the external validation, you were taught in your blueprint that that's what mattered. So that's what we then go on to do in our adulthood.
And then we deny self all the time.
And we call it self-betrayal. I betray myself in order to impress others.
You're not being yourself at all then, are you?
I mean, very little. And most people that I start working with, they don't know who they are because they're so adapted. And when I say adapted, it's we learn, we're born as an essence, and then we learn that our vitality, our noisiness and our ebullience, that's not welcome. So like, shh. And our messiness when we're creative, well, you don't make a mess in mom's kitchen. So like, let's keep that nice and tidy. So now I've squished my excitement for life. I've kept myself tidy and neat. I'm quieter, but I'm losing the essence of me. And the further the distance from the essence of myself to who I've become, the further the dis-ease.
But the essence, when you say losing, can you lose it entirely or are you burying it? Is the essence always still there underneath?
Always still there. Well, yes, I think so. When I say lose it, if we don't know what it is or where it is, then the chances of you getting it back are almost zero. That is a professional job, because if you think about, you don't know what you're aiming for, and it's buried under so many adaptations. So we peel them back, as you know, layer by layer. And we start with that foundation of self-respect, self-esteem, self-care. Okay. So self-esteem is next. Then we can start putting on the sexy stuff.
Oh, what's the sexy stuff?
Oh, the sexy stuff is dreaming, visioning. Who do I want to be? If there were no restrictions, who would you be? How would you show up in the world? How would you express yourself? What would you stand for if you weren't running your adaptations?
Big questions with a lot of unknown answers.
Yeah.
So how do you get to know what the answers are?
You release the adaptations layer by layer. So how can I put this? So once you identify the wounding, it's very, very simple. Certainly for somebody who knows what they're doing, it's very, very simple. Then for somebody to identify the layer that needs to be dissolved, not ripped off. Let's get clear about this. It's dissolved. So it's a gentle but fast process. And then the person is like, oh, hang on a minute. I haven't got that particular restriction, belief, concern anymore. Who am I now? So we feel our way into that. And then another layer comes up. We say, okay, well, let's have a look at that. And there's no judgment. Every adaptation came from a good place, however fucked up it is. I had sort of 50 shades of them. So, going through them one by one and understanding myself, it's been a mission, a real mission. But it's a journey that I would recommend anybody takes.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. You have to be prepared to work hard, though, and to face some really uncomfortable feelings.
And truths.
Truths that you didn't even know were there.
That's right. This work is not for the faint-hearted. And you mentioned fearless earlier. A lot of people say to me, how are you so fearless? Actually, I'm not. I'm a big baby. I was saying to you before we started, I had dreadful anxiety. I'm moving country shortly, and I had terrible anxiety, terror. So it's not that I'm fearless, it's that I won't allow that to stop me.
Yeah.
And that's courage. So,
Yes.
please, anybody that's listening to this, don't let fear get in the way. Courage is walking through the fear, doing your due diligence. Is the fear, if there's a tiger in the garden, you don't open the door. But most fears are the ego trying to stop us move forward, upwards, and dissolve some of our layers.
Yeah, because the brain thinks that anything unknown is dangerous.
That's right. The brain likes security, familiarity, and comfort, and it will go to great lengths to achieve those for us, and unconsciously.
Even if the familiar is a familiar hell, it's still familiar. Therefore, it feels more comfortable than the unknown.
That's right. If you come from an abusive family, your unconscious mind will often find it will gravitate towards creating or attracting more abuse in our adult life because it's familiar and it knows what to do with it.
Yes.
Yeah, and
You
that's,
understand that situation because it's your normal.
yeah, we're back to that word. Yeah.
I don't know what normal actually is, but we all have our own versions, don't we?
Yeah, it's a funny word, normal, because, obviously I work with a wide range of people, and honestly, there is no normal. Everybody tries to look normal and show up normal, but you scratch under the skin and there's all sorts of idiosyncrasies there. Humans are messy beings. We're wonderfully colourful and we're quite predictable, but we're messy beings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think everybody has that. There's no normal. It's all our own versions. We all have what's normal for me is not normal for you, not normal for somebody else. It's all our own versions, isn't it?
I would highly recommend anybody challenging their normal. Just check. What we do is we do a little inventory. Is that normal serving me? That's the only question. Is it right or wrong? Is it serving me? Well, okay, whether it's normal or not, let's change it if it's not. And if it is, go for it.
Absolutely. Michelle, you have been an incredibly interesting guest to have.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's been wonderful having you on. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners? What would you like to leave them with?
I would just like to say, well, thanks for listening and thanks for having me. But wherever you are on your journey, it's the perfect place. One of the greatest ways that we sabotage our growth, our healing, and our evolution is by thinking we should be further down the line, doing something different, being someone different. And acceptance is probably the most powerful lesson you will ever learn. So that chitter-chatter there, which is mainly ego, the judgmental chatter, is designed to keep you stuck. Let it go. Go into some acceptance and watch. And as I say, Tara Brach's book on radical acceptance is a great book. She's got radical acceptance, and I think it's radical compassion.
I've got the Radical Self-Acceptance book. Kristen Neff is also just, she's fierce self-compassion. She's got normal self-compassion and fierce self-compassion, which is quite a wow, actually, if I listen to the fierce one. It's really good.
They're similar, those two, actually, aren't they?
Yeah, a lot about the suppressing of women as well. So, yeah, very interesting read or listen to, however you choose to absorb your books. So, Michelle, how can somebody work with you should they want to? I'll obviously put links in the notes, but how can somebody contact you?
The best way to get hold of me is to drop me an email to mz999@me.com, and we'll set up an introductory half an hour meeting to just find out about what's going on, and let's have a look at where the wounds are, what you've tried, what you haven't tried, where you are, where you want to go, and we take it from there.
Amazing. Michelle's actually a very, very intuitive person who kind of scared the life out of me when I first had the meeting, because you knew things.
I can read. I feel things. I'm a high level empath, so I can actually feel what's going on in your body from here. And I've got clients in Hong Kong and all over the world, and I can feel what's going on. I can feel tension in the mind, and it's incredibly helpful.
So
and scary to be on the other side of.
It was. I was like, I don't know. I was quite taken aback. I learned so much working with you, so much about me and so much in general. Yeah, and I would definitely recommend to anybody who is looking to unpick the things that are holding them back and look at the inner child healing to definitely get help, because you don't know what you don't know.
You don't.
And somebody that does know can ask you the right questions, can show you the right corners to start unpicking and looking under. Yeah. Because if you just simply don't know, because back to the normal subject, that's been your normal. And so you don't know that it can be changed to something that serves you better.
Yeah. You've nailed it. You don't know what you don't know. None of us do.
No.
And a lot of people, Julia, they read loads of books. Most people that come to me have read libraries of books.
Same, yeah.
The work, but is not doing the work. And
no.
Even if it's just one session where you can see into the wounding and it is mapped out for you, it's just so helpful. Just so helpful.
It really is. Yeah, it's hard. Not going to lie, it's really hard.
It is.
It's really hard.
You
but it's so worth it.
Failed to impress me. With your courage and your grit and your grace.
Thank you.
It was a joy to behold, and it's just wonderful to see you flying.
Oh, well, bless you. You're so sweet. Thank you. And thank you all listeners for tuning in and listening. I would love if you could rate this podcast 5 stars. It really helps me reach more people. Michelle, you've been a superstar. Thank you so, so much. Maybe you'll come back and we'll have some more of these conversations.
I'd love to.
Some of the subjects we touched on today, because I think we could just go on for hours.
I think so. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, listeners.